what I've realized since having this moment of self-acceptance is the way that I used to motivate myself was through like fear of failure, of like, I wouldn't want to work on something. And then I would like think about how bad it would feel to fail. And I'd be like, that feels terrible. That feeling's way worse than what I'm feeling right now. Okay, let's get to work. Versus now I come at it from an angle of how great would it feel to finish this and like be proud of this and to succeed.
Welcome to SquarePeg's podcast, where we share first-hand experiences of neurodiverse graduate students and faculty members. I'm Arisagi. Today, my guest is Autumn Deitrick. She's finishing her master's degree at MIT in civil engineering, and she will be starting her PhD in engineering education at Penn State very soon. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you do too. Give it a listen. Hi, Autumn. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Thank you very much. Thank you for accepting my invitation to be with us in this episode. I'm very excited about this conversation. We had a brief conversation earlier this week, and what we discussed actually made me more excited. We have a lot of interesting things to talk about, and I hope we get to touch on most of what we want to discuss today. But before we start, why don't you tell our audience how we got to know each other, because again, you're in MIT, I'm at UConn, so a little bit of context will be helpful.
Yeah, of course. So I was introduced to you by my advisor, Dr. Catherine Berdanier. She's an associate professor of mechanical engineering with a focus in engineering education at Penn State. So I'm currently finishing up my master's degree in civil and environmental engineering through the MIT Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution Joint Program, but I'll be starting my PhD at Penn State this fall. And I had expressed interest to Dr. Berdanier about wanting to kind of pivot my research in the direction of making engineering education more inclusive for neurodiverse students. So this is a personal interest of mine because I have ADHD and it's impacted my learning experience, and I'd like to make others have better learning experiences than I had. And she said that you have done a lot of research in this area, and I checked out the neurodiversity website at UConn, and I really resonated with your affinity to the strengths-based approach when looking at neurodiversity in engineering. And then we got to meet in person at the American Society of Engineering Education conference just a month ago. So yeah.
In Baltimore.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that Kat introduced us. She's a good friend. And I'm very happy that you are interested in this topic. And it's so ironic also. We are both civil engineering by training, and what we are going to talk about is not civil engineering. Our passion is not also civil engineering anymore. So you told me about a TED-Talk that you recorded recently. Maybe by the time this episode is ready to be released, that TED-Talk is also publicly available. It would be nice if you, maybe in a few minutes, you tell us some background information on that and how you came to talk about becoming friendly with your brain and what was your motivation behind that.
Yeah, of course. So I recently gave a talk. I had given the talk actually a few times, but it was recently professionally recorded. And the talk is titled, Becoming Best Friends with My Brain and How You Can Too. I guess the talk itself is an artistic depiction of my journey to self-acceptance, with kind of the underlying theme of creating space for conversations surrounding neurodiversity in academia. But the talk is really for anyone who's curious about doing some introspection and thinking about how they learn, how they want to approach their day, and the life that they want to live. So it kind of has a few different themes woven throughout it. And I got the idea for the talk back in the fall. So I was only recently, this year, officially diagnosed with ADHD, but it was something that I had known about myself for a while. I think that's common for a lot of people, is kind of maybe, I don't know. And in the fall, I just had a real moment of clarity. I was like, yes, I'm like 100% sure that I do have ADHD. Once I had that moment of acceptance, I was like, okay, now I understand why I'm good at certain things, why I struggle with different things. Let's like work together, because I felt like for a while I was really working against myself. So my background is in environmental fluid mechanics, so I love water metaphors, but it wasn't flowing. And once I kind of had that moment of self-acceptance, I actually had the thought, like, let's be friends. Like, I want to be friends with myself. I want to treat myself like I would treat a friend more often than not. I think it's easy to kind of get into patterns of negative self-talk, and I wanted to have more positive conversations with myself. I wanted to bring out the best in myself. That moment, I thought of the name for the talk, Becoming Best Friends with My Brain and How You Can Too. And I was like, okay, I need to remember this. This could be something cool, but I didn't really start running with it until the winter time, when I was asked by a friend to give a talk for the MIT Civil and Environmental Engineering Graduate Student Seminar Series. So it's a series where you have only graduate students present, so there's no faculty, just grad students, and it's a space where you can practice public speaking. And I had asked my friend, hey, can I give the talk on anything I want? I really don't want to talk about my research. I think about it all the time. I'd like to talk about something a little different. He's like, yes, like, talk about whatever you want. I was like, okay, I have a good idea. I was kind of playing around, like looking through old photos and kind of photoshopping. And then some photos started like jumping at me that I had photoshopped years ago. And then I really started to like craft this whole narrative and imagery and really reflected on how I work best and things that I wanted to do more of. And those were kind of, in the talk I present, 3 modes of thinking that I like to experience throughout a day: dreaming, focused thinking, and not thinking. And we can touch on those if you want, but that's kind of the talk itself.
Before we go there, though, you're talking about the mindset shift. Can you unpack that a little bit more? Because a lot of times we go around and we think there is a knowledge gap that if it is filled, then we know how to manage something or deal with something. And a lot of times it's just the mindset shift. It's nothing is supposed to be different. It's just like the way we look at it needs to change a little bit. It's the easiest and the most difficult thing to do at the same time. So if you can explain it to us a little more clearly, how it happened, how it was triggered, it would be very, very useful, I think, for our listeners to know more about that.
So I guess it's been a long time coming. It's been like a building over many years. Like when I look back, I can see this journey that I've been on that kind of led me to get to that moment. I would describe myself as a very introspective person. I love to reflect. I love to really think about things like, why do I like what I like? Why do I dislike what I dislike? Why do I feel this way right now? So I guess that's kind of my nature, is I'm just a very reflective person. And I guess, how did I get to this moment? I guess I'll start from the beginning. I loved school growing up, like elementary school, middle school, high school. I really excelled in school. But what I didn't realize is the reason why I was able to perform so well was not only from being like a really determined and dedicated student and caring a lot, was because of structure. The structure that was in place that my parents helped to create. I have awesome parents. My mom's a reading specialist. And basically her job, I watched her growing up use all sorts of creative techniques to help people learn. Because kids study with reading for all different reasons. She taught me from an early age to be really resourceful and be creative with my learning. Oh, you don't have to solve this problem the way that everyone else does. Do it your own way. You didn't get it this time? Try again. So it's really this growth mindset was instilled in me from a really young age. So I've always been like, even though I'm not good at this, I can get really good. I can put in the work and figure out my own way to get good at things. And that was kind of how I was all throughout my K-12 education. Very determined and okay with doing things my own way. And I went to a smaller school in central Pennsylvania, just a regular public high school. And they were okay with, there were no like time limits on exams. So I could stay after and take as long as I wanted to. And I kind of knew like, oh, maybe takes me longer on an exam than other people, but I knew I was going to do really well on the exam. So I would like stay after, and I was like, oh, I just take a little bit longer. But then when you get to college and in engineering, everything's about efficiency and speed. It's not so much about the mastery of the material. It's like, how can you perform on exams? And I really struggled. And I didn't realize I didn't realize in high school that the reason why I was like needing that extra time and focusing even better after people were gone, I kind of had the room to myself, was that lack of extra stimulation and like the time to review my answers and check things. So that was something I had to figure out when I got to college, because at first I was like, why am I struggling all of a sudden? I'm working hard. I know the material, but my exam grades are not always reflecting this. And it felt like something I couldn't control. Like sometimes I'd perform really well, other times I wouldn't, but the effort was the same. And it became this like internal questioning, like what's happening? And that was really difficult. That was really hard, because I was like, did I just get like stupid all of a sudden? I was like, what is happening? And then I was really determined. I was like, I'm going to figure out a way to do well despite this and kind of figure things out. So that was one structure. Another structure I had in growing up was exercise. I was always involved in like physical activities. I played club soccer from 10 years old to 16, and then I started running cross country during my last 2 years of high school. But when I got to college, I was so overwhelmed with the transition of school, and I started like struggling with all of the classes you have to take and all of the exams, all of the assignments, that I found it really hard to prioritize.
Did anyone
exercise.
tell you about the importance of exercise?
Oh yeah, my parents. My dad used to say, Autumn, I think that it'd be really good for you. Like, you just go on a run, because I loved running in high school. Just go on a run. But I'd be like, I can't, I don't have time. He's like, I'm telling you, like, it's really good for you. You need to like take some of the wind out of your sails. Because I've always been a really like energetic person. Like, I have a lot of energy. I didn't realize in high school, like burning that energy off every day was so helpful for me and helped me to focus on my homework in the evenings. Like, I'd go after school, sitting in school all day, burn off a ton of energy, get some dopamine, endorphins, lovely brain chemicals, feel good chemicals, and then sit down and be able to work in the evening. But I didn't realize the importance of that. It was a process of realizing like, wow, things aren't working. How can I make them work better? And then during the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I was home and I was like, I want to start kind of building a fitness routine. That's a suggestion for people, that if physical movement is like available to you, if you can find some kind of physical movement, then trying to incorporate that schedule when there are lower stakes is really useful. So I did it during the summer. I'm not in school. I don't have classes. I have time. So I developed a really like strong routine. Then I was able to maintain that routine even when things got stressful. And I've only built that up over time. So I felt like I got even better at that my junior year. So all throughout undergrad, my goal was each year I want to improve my overall health and wellness.
And it doesn't need to be complicated, right? It can be very easy. It can be just like 5-minute stretch. You can start from that. Most of us probably are able to have some physical activity. Doesn't matter where we are, what accesses we have. And even a 2-minute physical activity is much, much better than nothing. And I made a mistake for a good portion of my time. I thought it is counterproductive. It's waste of time. It's better for me to sit and respond to that email and not delay that paper review or proposal submission. I was kind of unaware that I'm paying a price in a different way. I'm not talking about my health. The cost was my creativity, essentially. Please go back to your story. And so we are building into the moment of realization.
That's how I felt. If I'm spending time on exercise, I'm going to like not perform well on this exam, or I'm not going to do as well on this homework assignment. And I valued my grades more than my health at that point in time in my undergraduate education. And I got to the point where I realized if you don't have your health, what do you have? And I really need to like value that part of myself and take care of that, because that will only enhance things. So what I did is, at first, it would take some internal struggle to get out the door. I'd have to like tell myself, like there was a voice, like one side of myself that was like, you need to do this. This is good for you. Another voice, oh my God, like all this mountains of assignments. I just feel the anxiety.
Paralyzing.
Yeah. Like I can't do this. And I'm like, come on, you're going to go outside. You're going to run for 30 minutes and you're going to feel so good at the end of it. And then I'd feel good and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to do this again tomorrow. And then I would come to it tomorrow and I'd have that same feeling of I don't have the time. And I would set a goal that I wanted to run 3 times a week. I'm going to run 3 times a week no matter what. No matter how stressed I feel at school, no matter how busy I get, as long as my body is healthy, I'm going to go out and exercise. And over time, I guess we're engineers and scientists, data-driven people. I collected a lot of data. The results were crystal clear. Exercise helps me to perform better in school and life. Now I'm at the point where I realize, okay, this is good for me. And then that was part of it, was like recognizing how important fitness was and like why I needed that. And also the other thing was taking breaks. When I was in undergrad, I was like, I need to just work. I need to be working all the time, maximizing time so that I can like go to a good graduate program. Like I don't want to.
And this expectation was internal, or you were being told?
It was internal. I would say I have just such a supportive family who's never put any pressure on me. I put it all on myself. I've also realized now that my parents give good advice, so I try to listen.
I mean, so far, they have given you the best advices. Honestly, like you owe them a huge thank you.
Oh, especially like this year, I feel like since this moment, I'm like, you guys know a lot of things. So the other advice I was given, this was my sophomore year, so I had to take 2 gym classes at Penn State as part of my degree requirements, and there was like yoga as an option. And my mom was like, Autumn, I think yoga would be so good for you. I was like, I don't like to chill. I want to run. That's how I want to experience fitness. Like if I'm not getting that really high heart rate, all this release of like endorphins, I'm not interested. But I signed up for yoga. I was like, okay, this fits into my schedule. It was literally in the building right across from my dorm, so it was very convenient. And a good friend of mine also had signed up for this yoga class. I didn't really like it, if I'm being honest. I didn't like dislike it, but I wasn't completely sold after that class. And the problem that I now realize is it was an hour-long yoga class, and it was very slow. So there are different styles of yoga. This was like a yin yoga, so a lot of long, deep holds. And then we would end with a final relaxation. It'd be 9 a.m. I'd be like, I was like almost too relaxed. And then like, I had to then go to like a physics class. I'm like, wow, I'm in this Zen state. And now I have to go do electricity and magnetism. It was just not ideal. However, I came back to yoga during grad school. So I've been practicing yoga almost every day for 2 years now. I first did yoga mostly for the flexibility, but what I really got from it was mindfulness and really like listening to my body. And I ended up branching into making my running more reflective. And I would say the 2 years that I've been running at grad school, I don't run with music, and I do distance running. So I run for anywhere from like 30 minutes to an hour and a half, 30 to 90 minutes usually. It was a practice of I wanted to become comfortable with myself over the duration of that run and really like use that time to be present and be in the moment of the run, focusing on my breath, which I had learned from yoga. So I brought that into running. So I'd say I started to do a lot of self-reflection while I was running in graduate school. And that helps me realize like, wow, I'm solving a lot of homework problems while I'm running. Like I kind of had that realization, like I'm not solving them at my desk. I'm solving them while I'm running. And that was kind of getting me closer to this point of self-acceptance, of realizing, like this year I really realized the critical link between exercise and how my brain works and how that has such a positive impact on my life, and the power of taking breaks and me really needing to recognize when I hit that wall where my focus is gone, I've had enough, that the best thing for me to do is to do something different, get some movement in, and then I can return knowing that I can then continue my work later and not having guilt around it. I think that acceptance really is like, this is just how I operate. Okay, cool. There's no more of the feeling of, but if I get up and run, then I might not be able to turn in this assignment and things are going to go really bad. It was like now just having trust in myself that I know how I work best and that it will work out.
And that faith, that trust that you mentioned multiple times is so important. I had almost 30 minutes before we start recording, so I was debating if I have to study you a little bit more, go to your website, watch your TED Talk again, or just go for a walk. And I decided to go for a walk. And I'm very happy that I made that decision. It was that trust. Again, like every reason, every logic was telling me that, okay, you have to, put yourself in the zone. Study here a little bit. Get some background information. This kind of helped you to navigate the conversations. But again, I had this trust that going for a walk is a better, and I didn't think about this conversation. So a lot of times, as you said, we need to build that trust. We need some anecdotal evidence for ourselves to start believing that what we are being told, that like if you work straight, if you remain hyper focused, if you work more hours, it's better. I don't know, maybe it works for a factory work. I don't know if that is only hours, that you're essentially you're just doing something physically. And yet, if you think about those things that it works for, it is less mental, more physical. For something mental, if the demand on you is to solve a problem intellectually, sitting in front of the computer is not necessarily the way to go about it.
No, stress inhibits creativity.
Yes.
It really does. And I think that's been one of the biggest things I've learned over this past year is if I can find ways to release stress and just, again, trust myself that I will get the work done. If something ends up taking longer than I'd anticipated, it's okay to ask for an extension. It's really hard to know how long research is. It's impossible to know how long research is going to take. It's one of those things that, in a way, as grad students, it's a relationship between you and your advisor, but that pace can vary. And I felt like I was always having the foot on the gas pedal, and it doesn't work. You need to have times where you take the foot off the gas pedal. And it's been on my runs that I come up with the best ideas, or during my walks to work. I'm just really being present, and then I'll have an idea like, about an experiment. Maybe I'll try this. What if I did that instead? And it feels like magic.
You mentioned long runs. I was hearing about like taking long walks and the importance of that. And it's very interesting. It's mainly my engineering mind interpreted that as a walk that is longer. So I can, as opposed to like a long walk, I can do 3 short walks and it's going to do the same thing. And then I started building that habit, and I'm suggesting that to everyone these days, long walks. And I make it very clear that I don't mean 3 30-minute walks. I mean 1.5 hour walk, because the paradigm changes after 1 hour. It opens new frontiers. Like your brain, things that are not accessible after 30 minutes of walking or running become available to you. There is no shortcut to that. I've noticed that, and again, like I have to fact check this, but recently I learned that actually it was a habit that like some of these big scientists, Einstein actually used to take long walks around the campus, and we lost these somehow, and we lost this the meaning of these concepts. Even again, like I didn't know even what a long walk means. I didn't know it's a different paradigm. I didn't know it's a different concept. I thought it's just a walk that's longer, so it's more tiring, and more wasteful.
In academia, there's so much pressure on being productive. What is productive? I put in this many hours of work. Well, how much yield are you getting from it? I would say since I've kind of restructured my day and broken it up, I'm more productive than I've ever been. And I'm happier than I've ever been. And kind of tying back to that, long walks. Actually, it's funny you say an hour and a half, because I've found through personal research that whenever I'm taking a break from work, it has to be 2 hours. 1 hour is not enough for me to kind of get into a new mode of thinking and kind of then return to this focused thinking at work. It's just been, for whatever reason, it's 2 hours. I've tried like 1 hour and I'm like, I'm not ready yet. I need more time. And I think, like you're saying, the magic happens after you've been out there a while, because you can really settle in. I would describe when I'm going for a run, the first part of the run is just about getting settled in. I'm connecting with my breath. How do I feel today? How does my body feel? What pace feels comfortable for me to run? And then I'm kind of taking in the the world around me. Like, oh, it's a really sunny day. I can feel the warmth of the sun. I really like how that tree looks. Ooh, this is a cute dog. Just kind of taking in my surroundings. And then I'll kind of get into a flow state almost, where I'm just moving. Then I'll get into this state where a thought will come in, and in meditation, but you notice a thought, but you don't really give it energy. You're just like, oh, this is a thought. I feel like in the longer parts of my run, I'll get a thought and I'll be like, oh, I actually do want to kind of think about this, kind of play around with this different scenarios and ideas and like almost experiment and imagine things. I'm a very visual person. So if I'm working on an experiment that I need to do, I might start imagining the experimental setup and like, what if I did this? What if I did that? Or if I'm writing an essay or a speech, I'll start to think about, how do I want the words to come together? What if I put this idea here instead of there? Or if I'm working on a drawing, what colors are coming to mind? So it's really kind of a time of play. That's the best way to describe it, where I'm just playing around with ideas. There's no pressure attached to it. It's just an experimentation phase, which is where the creativity comes in.
Autumn, I have to confess something, honestly. If it was 4 or 5 years ago and I was listening to this conversation, depending on the day, my reaction would be either, yeah, she's young, she doesn't know what work is about. That could be a reaction of mine. Again, on a good day, my reaction would have been, good for her. She really worked hard and it's working out for her. Today, I'm listening to you and wishing at the same time, I'm silently thinking about that. I wish people out there could realize how easy it is to get to where you are. It's so readily available to us.
But yet so difficult, right? It's almost like a paradox, like so easy, yet so difficult. It's really that mental block of like just trusting yourself.
That paradigm shift, that mindset shift, yeah. And again, like when I say easy, it means that you don't have access to, for example, a super expensive psychologist that has told you this. It's something that every single person out there now can do 5 minutes of guided meditation on YouTube.
Yes, exactly.
So easy. Running doesn't need equipment.
That's why I
love it. Walking doesn't need equipment.
Same with
That's
yoga.
When I say that's why I say so readily available to us. When I say easy, I don't want to undermine the value of it. I would just want to say it doesn't cost anything. It's not gonna take much time. When we say 2 hours, when I look back, first, that I started taking long walks. Again, 2 hours is still like a super long walk for me. I typically don't get to do 2 hours, but I can do easily an hour and a half. I was nervous about that. I'm taking an hour and a half chunk of my time just walking. It was making me really nervous, honestly. But now I look back and say, the time, what was I doing if I was not walking? And it was pseudo-productivity. Going to a website and assuming that I'm productive, I'm reading something, I'm reviewing something, and 40 minutes, I written only one line, So it's very easy to convince yourself that you're productive, while it's just you're doing it to control your anxiety. The purpose subconsciously is to calm yourself. And there is a price to pay, which is added anxiety, actually, which is more tiredness, less creativity, more piled up work because you were not able to solve a problem. You just did something,
It's just such a positive feedback loop. When you take this time for yourself, then you're able to be more present at work. When I sit down to work, I'm focused. I'm working. My phone is away. Notifications are off. This is the task at hand. Let's see how far I can get. Once I hit that wall again, where the focus is gone, I don't fight it. I say, okay, I'm going to leave myself a note. This is where I'm stopping. This is where I want to pick up. So then it's easier for me the next time I sit down to get right back into it. Exercise, mindfulness is good for all brains. But I realize that for an ADHD brain, really, really good. Really helps me to focus and bring out the best in myself at work, in my personal life, and in my relationships, of being present, not feeling so drained all the time.
Did you ever at any point felt like prolonged period of anxiety?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I would say my undergraduate, very anxious all the time. I didn't end up getting academic accommodations until the second semester of my junior year. So it was a struggle because I knew things weren't working, but it's like I'd done so well in K-12 that no one ever like picked up on things. Like looking back, there are a lot of early signs of having ADHD. Yeah. But I think, again, I had a mom who was a teacher and who taught me how to be resourceful and creative in my education and accommodate for myself. I didn't realize that I was doing it so much, like how much I was doing. I was okay with that. I was like, I like working hard. I like putting effort and energy in. I like being creative. I like doing things in my own way. But it was then in college when things just weren't working anymore. It was kind of this internal struggle where then I would realize I would go into an exam very prepared. It would feel like I had all this information in my brain, but I lost the key and I'm like scrambling. I'm like, why can't I do this problem right now? I know how to do it, but it's just like blank. And I also have a sensory processing disorder. So like that combined with ADHD, I'm not only distracted, but I'm really sensitive to the stimuli in the environment. So like someone's pencil I'm listening to, I'm like, it's sounding like it's right in my ear. And I'm trying to focus. And I remember just telling myself, come on, Autumn, focus. But it's not something I realized now I had control of.
The worse it is, yeah.
Yeah, so it was like this really weird internal battle where I would be like, and then I would leave the exam room. I have a really good memory, so I could like see the whole exam and solve all the problems as I'm walking away. And I'd be like, what the heck? Like, why is this happening? I was able to still like, with an insane amount of work, do well in school because I really wanted my grades to reflect my level of effort and mastery. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And I had a lot of conversations with professors who would sometimes then be understanding because I'd be like, hey, look at this exam. It's 75% completed, but all my answers are correct. I literally just couldn't finish it. And I had one instructor who asked me, hey, Autumn, have you ever thought about getting academic accommodations? And I was like, I don't think I'd qualify. But he had like seen something in me that made him say that. And what he did for the next exam is, and I mean, this really meant a lot to me, he gave everyone extra time so that I could have it.
Wow.
Yeah, he was amazing. And I mean, that was a pretty cornerstone engineering class. It was engineering, mechanics, dynamics. And that's like a prerequisite, the like last regarded as a really tough class. And I wanted to do really well in it because it was like a prerequisite for fluid mechanics.
When we release this episode, can you send me the contact information of the person? I want to send a thank you email with the link to this episode.
I'll say who it is because I really like him. It was Dr. Gary Gray at Penn State. I definitely want to say hi to Dr. Gray when I'm back on campus. But I mean, that gave me the confidence that I could do well in engineering because on the next exam, I was able to like do really well. And it was just knowing that he knew that I'd worked hard and that I could do well really made a difference and is one of the reasons why I kept going in engineering.
I'm thinking as I'm listening that maybe not every student is as lucky as you were, but you had put yourself in that position to have the courage to have that conversation.
Oh yeah, those were difficult conversations.
Yes. It's not that someone is universally lucky or someone is universally unfortunate. Positioning matters also. If you have built that grit and strength that when it comes to this, I mean, you can advocate for yourself in a very reasonable, genuine fashion. I mean, if it wasn't genuine, I mean, probably even this professor would have reacted in a different way. That like, I have to be fair or this or that, you know. So I heard a lot of those excuses if they don't want to really kind of consider your request. So I'm thinking that all of the things that you mentioned, I mean, they have positioned you. So if some adverse situation arises, I mean, you still can manage it in a way that at the end, it doesn't turn out to be a harmful experience. So
I would say I had, again, really great advice from my parents. I would remember talking to my mom, I was really sad about this exam grade that I had gotten because it wasn't great. It wasn't putting me in a position that I'd have a really hard time getting an A in the class if the next two exams didn't go really well. She's like, Autumn, ask and you shall receive. The worst thing that happens is that you're in the same position that you're already in. So I was taught that at a really young age. Ask for help. So I did that all throughout my undergraduate education. I think to myself, am I just not good enough? And I'm like, no, I know this material really well. the problem is the structure of these classes is not so that I can demonstrate my knowledge to its best of its ability. And those were they were really like hard conversations to have. But I would ask myself, how badly do you want to succeed in this class? And the answer would be badly. I'm like, okay, go to office hours. And I built a lot of really great relationships with instructors by going to office hours. So they knew me. So that was a way that I was able to demonstrate myself as a student. You know, there's always a handful of professors that are not so great. Yeah. That sometimes I would just accept, like, you know what, this class, I'm going to give it my best shot, but it is what it is. I'm going to do my best. These other classes I can really excel in. So be it.
So you changed what you could and you accepted what you couldn't. So again, coming back to that realization that you have to accept your brain the way it is, because that acceptance is the key, honestly. It's becoming friend with your brain, as you nicely put it. Get into that a little bit, dive deeper. How it looks like, verbalize it. I mean, in a way that sounds more. What is that acceptance?
I think the acceptance is really listening to yourself and honoring how you feel at any given moment and what you actually need, not what you think you need. I need a break. I'm tired. That's fine. Maybe before, if I wasn't being a friend, I'd be like, I'm tired. Come on, Autumn. You have all these assignments to do. You want to perform really well. Sit down and work. Like, just more like forceful, like, I was always like pushing myself to work, focus, sit down, do this assignment. Versus now it's how you would talk to a friend. Like, if your friend told you that they needed a break from work, you say, yeah, let's go grab coffee and take a walk. And that's kind of how I try to be with myself. Like, if your friend tells you, like, I'm having trouble with solving this problem right now. Okay, you can come back and solve it later. I believe in you. Like, it's talking to yourself how you would talk to someone that you really care about.
So that's what you mean by becoming your brain's friend. You literally mean it.
Yeah, I actually mean it. Yeah. When I had that moment of realization, it was amazing. I was like, wow, I really like myself. I love myself. I like the way I think. I think it's fun. I love that someone can say words to me and it makes me think of like 10 different things and how I can tie ideas together and dream really big and imagine different possibilities and futures. Like those are strengths that I want to play to. I really love this creative artistic side of myself. And I've had different periods in life where I've always loved visual arts, like from early childhood. You do a lot of art throughout like elementary school because you have like art classes. And it was always just something that I could pick up and I just had really I always had ideas of like drawings that I could see in my mind or an art project. And just actualizing it was so fun. And then I kind of got into sports, spent less time on those arts. I actually never wanted to be an engineer. I also am glad though that I majored in civil engineering in undergrad and I'd pick it again. I really would. Like I think about that.
There are two things here I want you to explain a little deeper. One is you didn't want to be an engineer. Why did you choose engineering? And then why civil engineering?
I always saw myself as a well-rounded person. And I think that kind of coming back to this idea of having this growth mindset instilled in me at such a young age, I thought that I could really do almost anything. I was like, if I worked hard enough and put in the effort, I could probably figure out how to be good at something. So it was actually really difficult. I went to college undecided. I was undecided major for my first year because I wanted to explore my options. I was like, I felt like I had so many possibilities, but I really loved the environment. And my parents had encouraged me when I was applying to colleges, Autumn, make sure there is a school of engineering. And I was like, why? I'm not going to be an engineer. And I did an engineering job shot in high school and I hated it. I thought it was just so rigid. It came across as just a very rigid field. And I've always liked having freedom, liked having a lot of exploration freedom, wanted to use my creative abilities. But I also knew that I didn't really want to go to art school. I realized through taking AP Studio Art my senior year of high school that I like creating art when it's on my own time and it's just for me. Having to do it for an assignment takes the fun out of it, or like being graded for art. I really disliked it. So I kind of got to college. Again, my parents telling me, oh, Autumn, civil engineering would probably be a good fit for you. Me saying, you guys are so wrong. And then exploring all of my options. Because I was in the Schreier Honors College at Penn State, we're required to do an undergraduate thesis, and which means you have to do research, which is why I was drawn to go to Penn State and be in the honors college was because I was like, wow, research seems really cool. I love long-term goals. I was like, wow, a thesis, a long-term goal, research? I don't know what it is, but I want to learn. So the way that I picked civil engineering, again, I was pretty against engineering. I was like, I don't know if I want to do engineering, but I'll do something science related. I'd always had a passion for water. I spent a lot of time swimming in creeks in Pennsylvania, is where I grew up, and just watching water and being fascinated by it. And there were a lot of floods in my area, and I'd watched how the stream bed changed because of the flood, and like this, how the sediment transport changed and the rocks were moved. Yeah, it was just really a dynamic environment. I was interested in it. So I decided I'll pick my major based on what kind of research I'm interested in. So during my freshman year, I would just email professors and say, can I come talk to you about your research? I want to learn more. And being in the honors college, they're used to honors students reaching out. So they were all really amazing and took time to talk to me, explain the research. And the dean of the honors college at the time, she's since retired, Dr. Peggy Johnson, was the former department head of civil and environmental engineering at Penn State. And she did research related to river hydraulics. I don't know how I came to do it, but I decided I'd reach out to her and talk to her about her research and why she likes civil engineering. And we just really clicked. And I think having a role model, seeing a woman in engineering was really important for me to see. And she was just so encouraging and got me hooked up with my first research experience. And I kind of went from there. I also like that the civil engineering degree didn't have much chemistry. If I'm being honest, I was considering my options and I was like, I don't really like chemistry that much. Ooh, only intro chem and intro chem lab.
There are so many things that we have to change in our curriculum to be able to really bring more students like you to different majors. Majors that are not inclusive, it has nothing to do with their luck. They did it to themselves. If a major is fun, inclusive, welcoming, creative, people, they line up to get to that. So those majors that they end up not recruiting those type of minds or problem solvers that they think are ideal for them, they are doing that to themselves. It's major university programs all across. So if a program is not inclusive, it's not that their outreach activity is weak. There are some structural problems that makes it unattractive.
Yeah, and that's definitely was a turnoff for me with engineering, is I saw it as just a very rigid field, but then I think when they're trying to sometimes get different kinds of mind or bring diversity into engineering, they tout it as like, oh, you have some strengths in math and science and you're creative, come aboard. But then when you get in, you realize that there's not a whole lot of creativity in undergraduate classes. It's kind of like you have to learn this content, you have to solve the problems in these ways. This is how it is. So I think throughout my degree, I was kind of always thinking about the bigger picture. Like once I get this degree, then maybe I'll be able to experience some more creativity elsewhere. But I would say as an undergrad in the degree, there were a lot of times where you're taking classes, you're like, this is not what I thought it would be.
I think this is a responsibility that the programs have to be transparent. We are lying to students and their parents that engineering is a field that demands creativity. It's not. Either we are confused or we are lying. We have to fix that problem. I've seen so many students that they come to engineering because they want to build the stuff, they want to create things, they want to solve problems, and they get crushed. It's the lack of transparency or delusion in our end that's leading to that problem. And I'm not by any means discouraging creative students to come to engineering. I'm criticizing engineering faculty, engineering departments for either being delusional or lack transparency. What we call creativity has nothing to do with creativity. We want structured problem-solving skill. That's what we are demanding from our students.
Exactly. And that was something that, again, being an advocate for myself throughout my degree, I would get an exam score back or a homework problem, and I would check it against the answer key. And I'd be like, I got the answer right, or I did it differently. Why is it marked wrong? And I'd go to the instructor and I'd say, look at the steps that I took. The graders are expecting people to solve it in a certain way, and I always deviated. I've always deviated from whatever way they expect people to solve it. I always had a different approach. And then I'd get points back because they're like, you shouldn't have gotten points taken away. So I experienced that of trying to approach something from a different angle. And it, like, if a student isn't on top of things, they'd be like, oh, I got this wrong. I was always, why is this marked wrong? Can we talk about it? And it was having a lot of conversations with professors about class structures. Like, why is it structured in this way? Or even in like lab classes, these are not fun. And that's something that I'd really like to do either during my next adventure in graduate school or beyond. I love to help design like a fluid mechanics lab class that gets people excited about it and helps them have hands-on experience and learn about it from different angles, not just make them memorize equations or derive equations, but really see and understand what's happening with water. And that's what I'm really drawn to and why I've liked fluid mechanics was the visual aspect. But what I've come to realize is I don't like doing all the math all the time. Yeah, I can put in the effort to do it, but I like thinking about fluid mechanics in terms of like the visuals and the processes. When it comes down to the research, I realized there's a lot of math, a lot of data processing, a lot of equations. And it was just realizing I'm not playing to my strengths here. This isn't how I'm wired. I feel like I have a lot of creativity to bring to the field, but this field of research isn't a good fit for me. And that's okay. I think that's also totally valid that you try a field of engineering and realize. And I think kind of coming to this moment of self-acceptance, I realized it's not that I can't do it. It's that it's not for me. I know that I can do the research. I can do fluid mechanics research really well.
This is so sad. Again, I'm very happy for you, Autumn. I think what you're doing is beneficial to, I'm not talking about you. It's going to be more impactful for the society than staying in the engineering. So I can judge it based on that. But it is so sad that we failed to utilize your unique thinking style, unique worldview in engineering, because also engineering needs some.
You lose so much talent. And there were so many times in my undergraduate where I was like, I don't think engineering's for me. But I had parents who really, Autumn, you can do it. You belong here. Stay. And also mentors too, who really believed in me throughout my undergraduate degree. But I've always been turned off by it. And I didn't understand like why I was turned off by it. And I thought, maybe I want to be a professor so that I can like bring some different energy in. But I realized that I really like the education side of things. That's why I want to be a professor, because I want to teach and I want to connect with students and work with students. And having to manage a research lab and teach classes just would not allow me to make the impact that I want in the field. So that's how I was drawn to engineering education, of trying to elevate education in some way. I love the field. I love so many people that I've met in the field, but I also see a lot of people who are unhappy, and that makes me sad. I'm optimistic. I think that it could be better, and I'm going to try somehow to make it better.
Is it fair to say that, again, I'm connecting dots, and I'm forming now, I think it's tell me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. You came to engineering, got a little disappointed, if not a lot, and now you're changing your major to come back and fix engineering.
Correct. So I got to a point with my graduate education where I realized that I love a lot of things about fluid mechanics, but I don't want to do this kind of research all day, every day for my career. I really like education, and a PhD is you're trying to obtain mastery in something. And I was like, I don't want to obtain mastery in fluid mechanics. I want to obtain mastery in education because that's what I really care about. I love mentoring students. I love working with students. I love teaching. And I was like, how can I best utilize my efforts? Because I thought maybe I'll stay and get my PhD in doing fluid mechanics research, but then I'll go and do some other things afterwards. Like I'll have this PhD in civil and environmental engineering, but maybe then I'll try to do education work. And then I thought, well, if that's what I really want to do, I want to focus my energy and efforts into preparing and training for that career. How can I best utilize my energy and be excited about something and still have this background, still maybe make fluid mechanics classes better because I have this knowledge and this experience and this passion for it. And I have this passion for the environment, but bring this different set of skills to the table. Bring the education skills, bring the communication skills, bring my art background, and kind of bring something that other people aren't bringing, because in the research I was doing, I realized I'm not able to showcase all these other talents that I have. They're not being tapped upon.
I have a very pessimistic view of the future of the education. I think this is a system that is imploding on a much faster timeline that we can think about. Again, that's my pessimistic view. But when I talk to people like you, it resets me. It reminds me that, like, don't look at the system as it is and assume that only it's going to be run by these people like myself. There's a future generation of faculty members that are preparing to come to universities. And that really challenges that pessimistic narrative that I have. And I hope I'm wrong. I really hope that I'm proven wrong at the end, because it's a waste to build this system and then letting it collapse under its own weight by being ignorant, by not paying attention, by just drifting gradually, fraction of a degree a year. And now where we are, essentially we are asking our students to come to class, learn how to go through steps, do numerical calculation, be on time, present their work, be done. That is the only skill we are teaching our students. We are not necessarily effortfully connecting what we are teaching, the problems that we are discussing, to real life problems. That connection is lost, that is gone. And we still had some maybe fun types of problem that we used to ask. Now we only want students to be able to solve the most traditional, boring, dull type of problems. And I really hope that we see more and more people like you deciding to come to academia, because academia is stacked against people like you, honestly. But you will succeed. You will succeed big time. I'm telling you, because you have equipped yourself with the right tools. It's not going to be an easy path, because it's, again, like what it is designed to value and reward is not necessarily what you are good at or I'm good at. But probably if we have that critical mass, we can start changing things. And again, like during these conversations, I'm very happy that I'm doing this podcast. It has really opened up my mind. I've learned a lot, but I'm actually also learning a lot of parenting from you.
Yeah, I would say I have awesome parents, definitely.
Because I'm thinking as I'm listening that it's not that I have to also only remind the importance of education to my daughter. I have to make sure she knows that there are many ways to learning. And again, things that you discussed, because those they worked out, they really helped. Look at where you are. You're finishing a graduate degree at MIT. So we don't need to go further than this to judge that it worked. So you talked about the strengths, you mentioned the diagnosis, and you mentioned that helped you to organize what you knew about yourself in a way that it makes sense. I mean, can you tell more about that?
Yeah, I think it's just explained a lot. You know, I always was on this quest of, why am I like this? I think that's such a human question to ask. Why do I operate this way?
Like what? What do you mean by like what? Like operate what way?
Why am I someone who needs to be doing a lot of things, or just kind of thinking of things that are just a little bit off the wall, and just kind of getting weird looks of like, why are people, why does this seem so like extreme? And that was one of the reasons why I was drawn to MIT, is because MIT is known for like celebrating crazy ideas. And that's been one of my favorite parts about being here, is that I get less weird looks, but I still was regarded by my peers as like someone who is like very high energy. And like, why do I come across as so high energy compared to other people? And just throughout schooling, this feeling of when I was in school, having this feeling of needing to like rein it in. When you're sitting in a classroom, why is it so hard for me to sit still? Why is it so hard for me to learn in a classroom? And that's something I learned about myself, is I actually don't learn in the classroom. I learn outside of the classroom. Why am I so bad at taking notes? Like I would be in class and just miss a lot of things. I'm sitting here, how am I missing things? Why am I daydreaming right now? There are so many ways that you
Do you procrastinate also?
I don't procrastinate.
Interesting.
I will say this though. I think what helps me is I'm just such a I'm a very goal-oriented person, and I love deadlines. Nothing gets me working like a deadline. I set myself a lot of like intermediate deadlines. But what I've realized since having this moment of self-acceptance is the way that I used to motivate myself was through like fear of failure. Of like, I wouldn't want to work on something, and then I would like think about how bad it would feel to fail. And I'd be like, that feels terrible. That feeling's way worse than what I'm feeling right now. Okay, let's get to work. Versus now I come at it from an angle of how great would it feel to finish this and like be proud of this and to succeed and just like know that I can meet deadlines. But I do like to sit on things for a little bit before I submit it. I submit things on time, but I know that I might have missed things in different passes, and I like to be able to schedule in enough time to revisit things and kind of look at something again with fresh eyes, and catch errors that way versus putting so much pressure on myself of like not having enough time. That's how I've found that I relieve anxiety of starting things early and checking in on it and being disciplined to look at it. Because when I wait on things, then it does not feel good.
And that diagnosis helped you to understand why it is so.
Yeah. Why are these things difficult for me? And I think another aspect of it as well was just understanding how I operate and like what I need to succeed. Wow, actually these habits and skills that I've been building, this is why they work so well, and kind of gave me even more motivation to continue them. I'm now very excited to do these things, like even more motivation. Like there's no guilt at all, like so easy to like get out the door and exercise. It's gotten so much easier over the years, but now I'm like, this is so good for my brain. I'm gonna like come back, be focused at work, yay. Like that kind of energy I think has really been brought to the table. Another thing was organization. Why am I so bad at organizing the files on my computer? But having the growth mindset, I can get better at this. Maybe this isn't something that's easy for me off the bat, but how can I create structure to do this better? So I got really overwhelmed with all of the data that I collected for experiments. They just kept piling on, and I just didn't have an efficient system. And I hit the point where I was so overwhelmed with everything. I was like, wow, I'm so overwhelmed I don't even want to like open the files because it's just like a mess. That I was like, okay, I can figure out a way to be good at this. And I had a mentor in undergrad who was really big on file structure. And I honestly did not like it as an undergrad. I was like, why do I have to name my files this way and put them in these folders? I just normally didn't do that. But I didn't understand why I didn't like it that much. Like I was so turned off by it. I was like, why do I dislike this file structure so much? So I was thinking back, I was like, actually, that was a really good thing for me. How can I implement this for myself now? And I just took 2 weeks and I was like, I'm going to do this. Got myself organized. And now I have scheduled in on Fridays. I go through and I clean up my files. I tidy them up and I get myself a plan for the next week versus letting things pile up until it's chaos of like these tasks that I just don't feel motivated to do, like organization. Now I know this is very good for me. This will help relieve anxiety. I'm doing my future self a big favor.
When you said that you found a way not to procrastinate, because procrastination is root cause of problem for undergraduate and graduate students with ADHD, even for me. I mean, like the harm of procrastination is bigger than anything else in my like daily job. And I'm thinking like, how can you be ADHD and not procrastinate? Because that's one of the biggest thing in the ADHD profile. But it seems if you didn't have these type of little strategies and like tools,
yes,
then you would procrastinate.
Oh, 100%. And this is something that when I was diagnosed, they're like, you have ADHD 100%. The way that you rated yourself would actually be even higher if you didn't have early intervention from your parents to teach you all of these strategies and skills. So again, my mom is just such a creative educator and I aspire to be like her. I guess another side story of like how she works with kids. She connects with kids through art, music, physical activities to teach them reading. Like she really just tries all the strategies and meets students where they are. Anything's an option with her. she will find a way to help a student get better at reading. It's been so cool to see over the years how many different strategies she's employed. So from a young age, I really just got in the habit of planning and setting goals and having deadlines. And as soon as I think about something, writing it down, because it just takes a lot of mental pressure off, and kind of taking the time to revisit it every day and check in.
That's the secret, because again, like so many times I've tried to use a strategies like that, but I can stick to it for a week and then fizzles out. I think the secret is that like you've been working on that and using it and fine-tuning it for so long that I think you've finally figured out what works for you the best way.
Thank you. And I think too, it's something that's helped is just reflecting on things and checking in daily. I also really like journaling.
That's very important. Yeah, because sometimes it takes a week of something not working out for me until I realize it's not working. I could much earlier do some damage control if I was more mindful, like that this is not working out. I'm still like delaying this thing, or I haven't sent it out yet. So it takes to kind of like that moment of anxiety or panic for me to, oh my God, this is not working. Let's find another strategy. So it's very good. And I hope really in the future role that you will be in, I mean, I don't need to even hope, you will incorporate a lot of these understandings in your future research, in your future career. And that is great because it's just going to benefit the people who are going to work with you or benefit from the work you're doing, because independent of its topic, it's going to incorporate this wisdom. The more intentional you are about making this a core message, the better, I think. There are a lot of people out there that could benefit from a lot, including myself, building those strategies through time and not suddenly be hit with a kind of like a million-ton truck. I mean, like that, oh, now I have 5 deadlines. I mean, that's what happened. That's what happened to me actually when I started as an assistant professor. That's why I sought diagnosis, because every coping strategy I had failed because of the number of things I tasked. I mean, that I had to take care of during one weekday. So maybe they were not robust enough. But anyways, I mean, like that is something that, again, like this collective wisdom. That's why we are doing this podcast, to get a little bit of information from you, from the previous guest, and collectively we know more about what's out there that we can try or think about or strategize.
Yeah, and I think it really comes back to the growth mindset. Even if you're not out of the box good at this, you can be better. Whatever better means to you, it can be done.
You have achieved the wisdom people rarely achieve when they are in their 40s at this age. So let me see what you're going to do with the rest of it.
Who knows? I do a lot of things that I never thought I'd do. So sky's the limit.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. I mean it. I am cognizant of your time, and also we don't want the podcast to be too long for the sake of our audience. I start asking my finishing questions. I'm going to ask you to think about your 12, 13 years old and give her the best piece of advice that you wish she knew.
I think that I would tell my 12-year-old self to keep being herself, and that it's okay to like the things that you like. It's okay to dislike the things that you dislike, and that where there's a will, there's a way. You can figure out anything, and to keep asking for help and accepting help, and to be kind to herself.
How about your college age self?
It's important to take care of your health. It's important to take breaks. School is important, but it's not everything. And that you can be anything that you want to be. Just make sure that it's making you happy.
Thank you so much, Autumn. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm probably going to go listen to this episode multiple times myself. And I will make sure that my daughter also listens to this episode. Thank you, Autumn, again for being my guest today in this podcast. And thank you, my listeners for listening to this. I hope you enjoyed the content and what we discussed. Please leave us a note. Please give us feedback in the link provided in the show note. And also, please help us to spread the word about this podcast by sharing this with friends, with family. Also, subscribe to this podcast so when we release a new episode, you get notified. I will see you next time.